Hello, my name's Richard. I'm the pastor at the King's Church in Addlestone in Surrey. I have some hard words for you this morning. Well, to see what you make of it. This is what Jesus says. He says, whoever finds his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. Now, those words come in the midst of some other hard words from Jesus. And I don't know about you, but they're quite hard to stomach. For me, they're quite hard words to even understand what Jesus is talking about. So I'm just going to have a little think about or around those words today. And I'm going to tell you about some things that have come to my mind just recently. It's kind of like a recollection of some kind of childhood feeling that would happen from time to time, not necessarily very often, but I seem to remember it as some kind of like nightmare or something that would wake me up or semi-wake me up in the middle of the night. And this sensation and feeling and sort of experience I'd have. Now, you're thinking, great, Richard is now talking about his nightmares. Stay with me, please stay with me. It's not that bad. And it's a bit of a fuzzy memory, okay? The kind of thing was there's this sort of panic and fear that I had done something or something had happened which was going to have or had huge consequences, something that couldn't be reversed. Somehow I was responsible or involved in it, and I either got something wrong or I'd done something, and it just couldn't be undone, and the result was catastrophic. And it wasn't anything specific as such, but it was more of a sort of fear and a feeling that came on me. And so I would, like I say, I'd wake up and or be semi-awake and just sort of have this sort of real sense that the world was a different place. There was no going back, and something big had happened. And I was part of that, as I say, and it was a huge thing. Now, you may be thinking at this point, goodness me, what kind of childhood did Richard have to be having such strange experiences or dreams? I have to say I had a pretty normal childhood. I think I grew up in a loving, stable family environment, and there was nothing really extreme in my life. So who knows where these things come from? Who knows where these feelings come from? But I was thinking about this, and the best way I can describe it to you was imagine, if you can, I'm the hero of a Hollywood film. Imagine I'm the captain of a spaceship that is carrying the remnants of the human race after some terrible disaster, and this spaceship is the only hope of survival for the human race. Imagine that if you can. Are you getting the picture? And you're also learning, by the way, just something a little bit about me, more kind of how I grew up fascinated with space and astronomy and also Star Wars. That's just kind of how my mind works. I hope you can understand how my mind works and just trying to give you this picture. Anyway, so imagine that there's the scene in the film and I'm outside the spaceship doing a spacewalk, and I need to do some essential work on the outside of the spaceship. I need to tighten a bolt, a space bolt, on the outside of the spaceship that holds the whole spaceship together somehow. Remember, this is Hollywood and stories don't have to make sense. And I reach for my space spanner. You know, I'm floating in space. I'll try and do it for you. No, I won't. And I reach for my space spanner, and somehow it kind of, oh no, it kind of just falls out of my spacesuit pocket, or however you keep a space spanner, and it starts to float away, and I try and reach for it, and I can't quite grab it, and then it's just starting to float away, and there's nothing I can do about it. I'm tethered to the spaceship. This spanner, even though it's moving very slowly, is out of my reach and I can't go after it, and it's gone, slowly disappearing. And imagine, because this is a Hollywood film, I don't have any more space spanners, and there aren't any more space spanners in the whole of the universe or the spaceship, and that this bolt is holding the whole spaceship together, and if I don't tighten it, the whole thing's going to go wrong. It's a disaster waiting to happen. Just imagine watching that spanner disappear. You can see the film of this slow motion spanner disappearing off into outer space, into infinity, really. Imagine the feeling that, if this was a good Hollywood film, would stir up in you. You know, the fear, the despair, the anger, the anguish, the desperation, the panic, the look on the captain's face, me, the hero of the story, just as that spanner's disappearing off into the distance. If you can somehow kind of get your head around that kind of scene, that was the kind of sense and feeling that I used to wake up with just occasionally as a child. I hope you're still with me. Anyway, just recently, these things came to my mind, and I had completely forgotten these episodes of my childhood up until just recently. As I say, I don't think they happen very often. But there's been a number of things during the lockdown that have caused maybe some similar feelings to rise up in me, and these early experiences I had as a child have just sort of resonated, and just that's why they've come to my mind. I don't know why. I don't know how my mind works. Do you know how your mind works? Who knows? Anyway, lockdown has caused all kinds of things to be lost. And all kinds of things to be changed, things that have really affected us. So, for example, some people say that children have lost irreplaceably part of their education and they'll never get it back. And there's that real feeling of loss for some people in that, or some children in that. For others, there's been a loss of time. Maybe if there's been a newborn in the last however many months now we've been in lockdown, and we haven't really been able, the family hasn't been able to spend time with the newborn baby, and so they're missing things like the first word or the first walk, or all those kind of things that happen, and we can't get that time back. Those moments are gone, or maybe they're just other sort of precious moments with dear friends and family that we've just not been able to have. And you can't regain time. You can't go back in time and have those things again. We are now all a little bit older than we were in March, and things have been lost, right? I don't know if you're feeling that too. Some people have lost their business or their livelihood. Just the way things have panned out. They've dried up, and it's difficult to see how those things can be got back. We've all lost a certain amount of freedom, if not a lot of freedom. We've lost a lot of what was familiar to us. Things are very different now, and it's quite likely they'll never be fully the same as they were before. And of course, there are some people who have actually lost loved ones. People have died either through COVID or not. But the way in which we grieve, even we've lost the way we used to be able to mourn and be together and comfort one another. So there's a lot of things that are being lost, and maybe a bit like my spanner, they seem to be sort of drifting off into space, and you can't grab a hold of them anymore. And there's this feeling of kind of it's just a heavy feeling. Now, I think it's fair to say that those forms of loss and those things that we're experiencing and have been experiencing for many months now come in some form of grief, if I'm honest. There's this fear and there's despair, there's anger, there's anguish, there's desperation, there's panic involved in a lot of the way we feel, and we've been dealing with some of these things. Even though a lot of us have got used to a lot of it now, there's still underlying that sense of loss. And I think these kind of things, they feel quite imposing. They sometimes feel quite threatening. Our normal, our expected direction, our identity, our security has all been undone. And there's this aching feeling deep down that something has happened and we can't undo it or go back. I don't know if anyone else is feeling that, but it's certainly something that I'm sort of sensing. Now, whether you are experiencing that now through lockdown or not, my guess is at some point in our lives, we will all go through at least one or two of these periods where we will have that sort of sense of feeling that the spanner has come out of our pocket and is now floating away off into outer space, and there is nothing we can do about it. Those kind of feelings and experiences in our life will happen to all of us at some point. And suppose the question always, the question to ask is, how do we react? How do we respond? What do we do with those feelings? And is God involved in this, in these moments? And I think there's a natural tendency to try and fight and to try and struggle to maintain what we had, who we were, to hold on to the things that gave us security, to try and return to the things we called normal, to somehow go back to what was home. Whatever, however we would define that, to fight for things that we had, for people we love. And in some instances, I would say that's the right course of action, and that would be totally right. But I'm learning to identify in myself what my core motivations are, not just how I'm reacting maybe on the surface, but what's going on deep down inside me, and why am I reacting the way I'm reacting, if that makes sense. And And I suggest we all take time to do that actually in the way, particularly when we respond in extremes. And ask ourselves, why am I really behaving like this? Why am I really thinking like this? And where we find ourselves deep down behaving in a way that we're just trying to cling on to our own insecure identity in life, we need to ask some questions of ourselves. Because Jesus says, whoever finds his life will lose it. And so much of the way we're conditioned in the world is to strive for me, to strive for my life and my needs and my rights and my happiness and myself, to do everything to find my life and to hold on to those things which I have got security from, identity from, meaning from, and you may well find life in that way, but Jesus says whoever finds life will lose it. Meaning the things we attach ourselves to, the things we cling on to, the things that we can make an identity for ourselves or give us some sense of worth or significance, all of those things that we cling on to ourselves will eventually fade away. They'll eventually fall away and we'll be left with, well, nothing. So Jesus advocates this it's a different approach. And he says, whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. So a question you can ask yourself is, how good am I at losing my life? Now there's an implication in what Jesus is saying, that actually he's saying that there will be people that will actually die and lose their life for having a faith in Jesus. They will become martyrs. And there's an encouragement for those people that if you lose your life in that way, then you will find it in Jesus. But I think more generally, because not all of us will become martyrs. And in fact, if you look through history, the percentage of Christians that are martyrs is narrow compared to the full body of the church. But anyway, there's an encouragement for martyrs out there. But more generally, because I'm guessing I'm speaking to more generally to people here, there's this speaking really of a sense of losing one's life, in that we are losing and letting go of our identity, our security, the things we call normal, in the things that we thought we needed, the things that we thought were real, the things that we cling on to here in this world. And for me, I've just been thinking about this recently, particularly in lockdown. I've been, I think, led to deliberately let go of some things. Things that I hadn't realised I was holding on to so tightly or relying on. And for example, I won't go into all the details, but in one sense for me, it's about letting go of relationships. Not abandoning relationships or stopping relationships. In fact, quite the opposite. I think through this I'm valuing the relationships more, but actually letting go of finding my primary identity and security and life through some of these relationships. Now, on the surface, some of all of these relationships, I don't think have changed. And as I say, I think they've been enriched in many ways for me. But deeper down, things are changing in me, and I'm letting go of my deeper needs. And I'm letting go of my core identity being found in these relationships. I'm losing that, and I'm letting go of it, and I'm finding another life, which, as I say, is actually a richer and fuller life. I hope this is making sense. And in all, I'm realizing that my identity and my life comes through Jesus. I am a child of God. There is my fundamental identifier. There's my fundamental relationship. I am a child of God, and God is my Father. And actually, in letting go of some other areas of other identities, I'm actually growing into that and becoming more secure in that. And I'm finding a new life. Because Jesus says, whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. Now, I don't know how all this sounds to you. Maybe you think I've been in lockdown too long. But let me just speak about how faith in Jesus brings peace in the idea of letting go and losing things. And this can apply to all kinds of things, not just relationships, but all kinds of things. And maybe you've been going through things in lockdown where you've had to let go of stuff. But let me just say to you how faith in Jesus speaks into that, because there's a difference between losing and letting go of stuff into nothingness, or into sort of just never mind. And there's a difference between that and losing and letting go of things into God. So go back to the Hollywood film. You remember the one Hollywood film I was in? Up for an Oscar this year. That's because not many films have been released. But I'm trying to save the spaceship, right? And the spanner's drifting off into outer space. Now, when there's no faith and there is no God, that spanner is just going off into infinity. It's just disappearing off. It's going to be lost. The spaceship can no longer survive without this bolt being tightened, and everything ends. And everything seems pointless and insignificant. And in this big universe, this tiny spanner and really tiny spaceship of just whatever. It's the loss. And then we feel this kind of a catastrophic loss and failure, and what's the point? And there's that deep sense of kind of, if we view life like that. But if we have faith in God and through Jesus, when that spanner disappears off, and by the way, when that happens, I'm not actually the hero of the story anymore, because once that spanner's left my hand, I have nothing to be a hero with. And the spanner has drifted off, not into infinite nothingness, but actually it is now in the hands of an eternal God. There's a big difference there. Still the spanner's disappearing. Still the spaceship is in peril. Still my life is in peril. But now I am totally in the hands of God. I've let go. There's nothing I can do. It's out of my hands. And only God can rescue. And I have to say, and as I've been experiencing just recently, I've just let go of the things and just said, well, there's nothing I can do about this. And then just rested in God, eternal God. That spanner hasn't disappeared into nothing. It has been handed over into the hands of God. Our lives are handed over into the hands of God. Then we wait for God's rescue. And it's a very peaceful place to be. And so, in the film, I don't know how this would be for a Hollywood ending. The spanner disappears off, everyone goes, oh no, and then God comes and rescues. If there's any directors out there who want to sign me up for this film, then please do let me know and send me a message. But anyway, just to summarise, there's a difference between letting go of things and losing things into nothingness, where everything is meaningless and there is that aching, desperate feeling of like, oh no, what is going on here? There's a big difference between that and letting go of things into an eternal God, losing life and losing things for his sake, and finding life anew. There is a great peace in that, which I've experienced, and I encourage you, if you are feeling any of those kind of feelings yourself, then allow yourself to fall into the hands of the everlasting Father, and allow him to minister his peace and his salvation to you. Because the ultimate good news is this. Because, remember, Jesus says, whoever finds his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. The ultimate thing is this, that in Jesus, in Jesus, the life we've lost is nothing compared to the life we find in him. The life we've lost is nothing compared to the life we find in him. And so I encourage you, where you are feeling a sense of loss, if that's the case for you, or when that does happen, when grief comes, and when just things become overwhelming and we almost can't cope, allow yourself just to let go and let yourself fall into the hands of the Almighty and know his peace and his comfort and his salvation and his protection in your life, and that you would know that the life that you've lost is nothing compared to the life that you will find in Jesus. Amen.